Is the 12th of October in the year 2022, the year that the red wave hits and engulfs the state of Oregon. And with me here tonight is Don Anderson, a regular Wednesday night co-host. I'm Kevin Hoare, and Don, welcome to the show. Welcome to Wednesday, the hump day.
Yeah, glad to be back. Love Wednesdays. Had to miss last Wednesday because of a nasty cold, but I am glad to be back. And we're pretty close to November, home stretch.
We are heading right towards that ballot publication deadline, and everybody will be able to express their will at the ballot box, which we are going to repeatedly encourage during this show today. But let's start with our opening laugh. Today's opening laugh is a two-headed monster. And when you hear these headlines, one of them will make you laugh. The first one, you're like, why is that funny? It says the USDA invests millions to bring high-speed internet to rural Oregon. Now, that's funny on a couple of different levels. The USDA, yes, that's the same one that does meat inspections. Whenever I think of somebody who's a specialist in providing high-speed internet for rural areas, it is the people who inspect meat. They've got it down. But the only thing about it is I'd almost be willing to try them if it would result in this finally happening, because the Democrats who have been running Oregon for decades have been promising high-speed rural broadband in Oregon. And you know what hasn't happened? High-speed rural broadband. So every couple of years, they dispense more money towards that goal, and then there isn't any. And then Tina Kotek in the first debate, I noticed she was like proudly touting this. And it's funny how these stories just suddenly start getting sprinkled into the news, and it's the USDA. So, and it's Ron Wyden standing there trying to prove to everybody that they're finally going to bring something that they actually never do, which is rural broadband. Because I always like to say in rural Oregon, the attitude that the Democrats, who are all from these big urban areas like Portland and the Willamette Valley and so on, if the rural areas don't have an economy that's strong, that they can, it's a lot of natural resource based or farming based economies, then usually they say let them have tourism, or in this case, let them eat rural broadband. A very Marie Antoinette approach to rural Oregon, also known as the colonies of Portland. So,
it's a crack up you're saying. You mentioned Ron Wyden. I don't watch a whole lot of TV, but I happened to catch. It must have been on the internet. It was a Ron Wyden ad, and he's out there talking about prices of houses in Portland and how speculators have driven the prices sky high. It's like incredible when you think about the policies of the Democrat Party that have made it so difficult to build additional property. And that is, they are the problem. But they want to point to, they always want to point to somebody else to be in their problem. They are the problem. You talk to people who own property there, you can't do anything with it. Anytime you want to make a change to your property to make a rental unit or expand something, the permit fees and the taxes are astronomical. I've known several people have gotten out of the business for that very reason, not to mention the fact that the crime, which I know we're going to get to in a moment here, is so bad that who would want to take the risk to have a business of any kind in that place? But he's out there talking about speculators, right?
Yeah, which is the business his son is in. So,
yeah.
It's like hedge funds and speculation. And I guess they've had some disagreements because, Daddy, why can't I just keep being super rich and investing other people's money however I like? And he's like, well, son, we have to go and let the regular folks know that we still care about them by talking about how bad you are. So you go ahead and make money, and we'll and just like Hunter makes sure the big guy gets all his 10%. You make sure that everything is all set for me, and I will talk about how bad you are so I can get reelected. And that's the game that they play.
Don't help us, please. Don't help us. Don't help us.
Here's what Ron Wyden said, by the way. He goes, "You can't have big league quality of life in rural Oregon with little league transportation and communication systems. Well, excuse me, who's been in charge of Oregon for decades? You delivered all the stuff that you're criticizing.
Uh,
That's
it's
and he's
important.
been a US senator. I've been told that
Mhm,
it doesn't matter whether Republicans control the House or the Senate at the federal level.
mhm.
If the senators from that state don't want money to be spent in that state, it doesn't get spent.
Yeah, yeah. These things are only important every election cycle. You notice, right? They don't talk about it. Man, November. What is the election? If the election is November 6th, on November 7th, you'll never hear from them again on this issue.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. The,
They
the,
won't.
the rural broadband goes back to its sarcophagus where they store it for 18 months before they bring it out to talk about it when they're trying to get reelected again. No, that's right. It's you've hit it straight on the head. Well, here's the other humorous story that I found, and it leads right into our discussion of the governor's race. So, for a mere $10,000 donation to Tina Kotek, you can get a picture with President Brandon. He's actually coming to Oregon for an October 15th fundraiser because somebody has to save Tina Kotek from herself and from the progressive left, who's made a fine mess of this state and pissed
Mhm.
off everybody. But I just got to believe that years from now, when somebody looks back at that picture, even the ones who are enthusiastic Democrats, they're not going to be hanging that picture on a wall, are they?
Yeah. Well,
One
this
of the
is the
worst
thing.
presidents of all time that
Who,
barely
who,
cognitive when the picture was taken.
how? I'm not even sure what to say about that. Why would you invite the worst? Well, the least. I'll just use this term. How about one of the least popular, if not the the least popular president in history, and you're going to invite him to help your campaign? I mean, where's the strategy in that?
I think that we talked about it the other day on the Captive Audience and said it's like taking two heavy rocks and tying them together and expecting them to float. Um, and you know what doesn't float? The stuff they've been doing to this state. Well, let's launch into the governor's race here. So, big headline. So, Tina Kotek, according to a press release from Christine Drazen's campaign, Tina Kotek's minions, her dirty, dark underworld friends from mostly from the public employee unions and other radical left activist groups, are going to be launching a vicious negative ad campaign funded with what Tina Kotek has referred to as dark money. Now, dark money is money that is being raised by organizations that don't have to disclose who contributed, and certainly not in the time frame in which the campaign's taking place. But you know who is a um, supposedly a great champion for campaign finance reform uh, in order to get rid of out of state dark money group spending here in Oregon? Tina Kotek.
Tina, yeah.
So Tina Kotek, apparently, but this is now her closest friends are preparing 11th hour negative ad blitz using the same old dirty tricks and tactics to try and prop up Tina's failing campaign. If she's so concerned about campaign finance reform, we call on her to denounce this shady new PAC. The shady new PAC is called Meet Christine Drazen. It was formed 2 days ago and lists a guy named Mike Powers, the president of SEIU 503, who is the PAC's sole director. The SEIU, Service Employees International Union, a public employees union, has donated hundreds of thousands of dollars in reported contributions to Kotek through the years and is well established as one of Kotek's strongest political allies. But they are going to shovel money that they've managed to get from all kinds of sources that they don't have to report straight into a dark money PAC. I guess it's the height of hypocrisy, but we've come to expect hypocrisy from Tina Kotek.
Yeah, well, at some point, that stuff works for a while, but at some point you got to run on results. And the results that Oregonians have been getting are so hideous. I mean, there are people, the fools, they're going to get the fool vote, but that's not going to change. The rest, a good 2/3 of the population's had enough of it. I just don't, unless I'm misreading it, I just don't see how it's going. I don't think it's going to work this time.
I think that they have boxed themselves in, and this negative ad blitz, the hypocritical negative ad blitz, is going to be. It's like a wild animal that's backed itself into a corner, and now the only way it knows how to get out is being totally vicious. And on top of that, there's been this story reverberating for days that Tina Kotek is in fact out effectively buying endorsements. So what does that mean? Well, according to a press release from the Republican Governors Association, she has been going to people that she wants support from and offering them things, which you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to offer things of value to do stuff like drop out of the race as a third party candidate. She has been trying to silence some people, and I know for a fact that some of this is happening personally, that I've witnessed, silenced, for intimidate people into endorsing her. And so this is her game. And guess what? If you thought that's just a campaign tactic, I'm sorry, but this is what she's going to do if she were to prevail in this election.
Well, the whole party has become that way. I mean, that's what they are. They never run. Look. When do you see them running on issues? It always resorts to name calling. Like this whole campaign that she's about to put up is all going to be about name calling. We'll never run an issue because they've been in control, and the issues are the condition the state's in. They're not going to talk about, law, for example, law and order, or the educational system, or illegal immigration, or outrageous, rents, or homelessness, because they've driven all of it.
Oh, by the way, I misspoke. I didn't mean buying endorsements. I meant burying endorsements. She's taking in money. So she's trying to bury endorsements. And that's what I meant to say. And it's because what she's doing is she's taking endorsements from people like the guy who hired a convicted sex offender to work for his campaign as he's running for state rep. And he himself is a convicted felon. She endorsed him. She also endorsed and has been endorsed by a Democratic candidate for Oregon State House, that you probably heard about this, repeatedly used racial slurs in a book that he wrote. He's Senator Jeff Golden, and he used the N-word constantly in a 1971 book he wrote called Watermelon Summer. Democrats can get away with this crap.
They get away with it all day.
Yeah. As we've seen down in LA, the Democrats on the LA City Council, who are receiving a torrent of criticism right now, apparently they also thought that they can get away with as much racism as they want. Real racism, not the stuff they go and accuse you and me of for disagreeing with them on policy, but real racism, where they call you, a white supremacist. Crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
They thought they could get away with real racism, and maybe not. Not this election. Maybe not.
Well, they are the party of the KKK, and a lot of people don't realize that, but they are the party that gave birth to all that.
That's right. So, those white robes were Democrat Party uniforms in 1920, right?
That's what they were.
Yeah. Well, so when we shift gears here and we look at what's happening with Betsy Johnson, apparently Betsy Johnson and Tina Kotek went to a forum that was supposed to be about business, housing, and transportation. And it was a forum that was not attended by Christine Drazan. But we've been told that Betsy Johnson is a vociferous critic of Tina Kotek. However, the headline here says Kotek Johnson agree on much at Governor Online Forum.
Shocking.
I know.
So this wasn't a debate? Was this a hug fest or a debate?
Yes. And what happened was she just proved true what we know from the reports last week when they compared their voting records, that Betsy Johnson is a 94% Tina Kotek. That's how their voting records are that similar, that Betsy Johnson voted 94% of the time with Tina Kotek. So if you look at the ingredients on the Betsy Johnson package, it's 94% Tina Kotek. 6%, I don't know, BS.
So if you didn't like the taste of that product, don't eat any more of that.
That's right. Watch the 94% ingredient. The 6% ingredient is not going to make the other 94% better. And if you want real change in this state, you really should support Christine Drazan, who has an across-the-board strategy of shifting policies, firing all the idiots that have been running our state government who deserve to be fired now, and replaced with fresh new faces that can actually make sure that we have good governance and not wasteful, cover your butt, corrupt governance, which has been going on for decades. Christine Drazan is actually going to have somebody come into town. It's the underdog governor, America's underdog governor, the one that they wrote off back in 2021, who ran for Virginia governor. They said, oh, he can't win. He came back, he won. That's Governor Glenn Youngkin from Virginia. He's coming out to support Christine.
Oh, that's great.
And so he's going to have a fundraiser here in the next few days for her. And obviously there'll be some media about that too. And I think this is a great, great feeling that I have that we're going to have a Youngkin rally here as we head into the final stretch.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is so awesome. And it's amazing when you look back. Can you think of a more liberal state? And we know it's all Portland driven, so I don't want to blame the whole state. But Portland, this Willamette Valley, I'll call it, more liberal state than Oregon. And to have it be up for grabs, that tells you just what a terrible job they've done. It's objectively bad. All you need to do is drive down the street, walk through the streets of downtown Portland. You can feel it when you go there. I grew up there. It does not feel the same.
And know who knows this? A whole bunch of Democrats that aren't going to vote for Tina Kotek. That's what's happening. They might vote for Betsy, they might vote for Christine, but they're not voting for Tina because they can't stand the smell of corruption and failure that pervades Tina Kotek. You know what else pervades Tina Kotek and her campaign? There's a chart I just posted from our friends at the Oregon Catalyst and the Taxpayers Association that shows how taxes spiked during the Kate Brown, Tina Kotek era. Kate Brown was the governor from February of 2015 till now. And during that time period, when you had Kate Brown and you had Tina Kotek as the Speaker of the House, business taxes dramatically spiked. And this is something that everybody should recognize and come to expect. It really looks like one of these hockey sticks, that they like to use for climate change temperatures, even though that's kind of, been severely discredited. But if you look at it, it's like 1995 through 2015, and then boom, the taxes went up dramatically. And what have those high business taxes done? Portland's economic recovery is 60th out of 62 cities in the United States. For the first time, more people are fleeing Oregon than moving into the state, which is a bad trend because that happened with California. California actually lost population for the first time in 100 years and lost seats in Congress as a result. Kotek and Brown's corporate activities tax, the CAT tax as they call it, destroyed the entire Bi-Mart pharmacy chain. According to Bi-Mart, it just ruined it and said we can't maintain a proper business anymore, so we're ending it. So less pharmacies.
You heard about downtown? Yeah, the hotels in downtown Portland. They're losing business, hand over fist, and they're leaving.
Columbia Steel also closed its stores, laid off 200 workers, and blamed high business taxes as one of the main reasons. Crime was another, by the way. Kotek's hospital and healthcare taxes on hospitals during a pandemic was one of the main reasons why a major hospital, Asante Rogue Regional Hospital, closed, losing 400 employees. Other hospitals lost $317 million in revenue in 2022 alone. But They stuck them with some taxes because apparently they're rich. When you're losing that much money, you are rich. So okay,
Yeah.
that's Democrat economics.
Yeah.
Just to say it's not economics. It's
Let's raise taxes when it's tougher for businesses. Who do they think work at these businesses?
yeah.
Who do you think pays the payroll? Who at the end of the day pays the taxes? It's just incredible. It's that's why I'm convinced it's one of two things. Either it's strategic and they're doing it on purpose to destroy us, or they're really, really stupid. I'm being charitable and thinking it's strategic.
Yeah, I know. You have to decide whether you're going to give them credit for competence, incompetence, or give them credit for stupidity, or some noxious combination of both that they seem to exhibit. It's almost like a flip side of the same coin when it comes to
Yeah.
what the Democrats have done to our state.
Yeah, well, the
So
result is the same either way.
here's some really good news, and I think it's important for everybody to hear this because governor's race isn't the only race going on in this state. That's a big race, and we could win it. But there are 3 congressional races that are competitive. CD, 4th congressional district down in Southeast Oregon. That's Alex Skarlatos is the Republican against Val Hoyle, which is a far left Democrat. And that's competitive, and he's fighting hard there. There's the 5th congressional district, which is Lori Chavez DeRemer, the Republican candidate, former mayor of Happy Valley, is running against. Oh, I forget her name now. Well, it doesn't matter because I don't think that person's going to win. I'm sorry, but I forgot her name, and that's how little I want to remember it because I can't look it up. Oh, here it is. Jamie McLeod Skinner, and a fake Oregon resident. That's what I like to call her. And a fake rural dweller. Fake. The one who puts on the cowboy hat for the TV commercials. Anyway,
Right, yeah.
yeah, she's from San Francisco. Sorry, and she is a Bernie Sanders acolyte. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, because the Democrat that used to occupy or still occupies the seat but did not win his primary, Kurt Schrader, was too moderate for them. So that race is very competitive, and Lori Chavez DeRemer needs our support to get across the finish line. But then CD5 was considered a toss-up. They moved it from leans Democrat to a toss-up. I think it might even lean Republican a little bit right now based on the things I've heard. But here's a sign that maybe things are moving in our direction. A race that was considered leans Democrat. It's the new congressional district, the 6th congressional district, which encompasses like Yamhill County, parts of Marion, I guess, east Washington County, and several other areas. That district, also in Polk County, that district has gone from being leans Democrat to considered to be a toss-up within reach for Republicans to win. And you know how I know that? The Cook Political Report, which is kind of an unbiased, calls balls and strikes in terms of what's going on in races across the country, has recategorized it as of Tuesday morning from lean Democrat to toss-up. You know how else I know that? If you watch network television news, there's like 8,000 negative ads by Andrea Salinas, who wants everyone to believe that because she's the daughter of a police officer, but she voted for all of this stuff to make it easy for rampant urban camping and crime to engulf the state, that you should vote for her. And then she's been running relentless negative ads, which are verifiable, bold-faced lies about Mike Erickson, for which she is being sued by him. They're running them constantly. They're throwing everything in the kitchen sink because they are desperate to try and keep that seat in a Democratic category, and they're in trouble. They're in big trouble. Mike Erickson is running some pretty good ads, hitting her pretty hard, but also starting to also getting the word out about him and his campaign. And he's a businessman, a father. This is one to watch. This is big news. This is the best positive news I've got to report here today.
No, that is great. And you can tell when they start doing nothing but slinging hash rather than talking about the issues, they've reached desperation because they got nothing to sell. They
Yeah,
really don't. And so they're basically selling to the people who are going to vote for them anyway. The people who buy into those ads, you already got them. You're going to have to get some people towards the middle, and I think the middle's running it from them because the middle is going to the store and seeing what food prices are, and seeing what crime is, and seeing what traffic looks like. It's like Mad Max in Portland now in that area, right?
it's
Um,
just crazy. Yeah,
yeah,
it's insane. And and they are doing stuff to this state as we speak, that with their policies that are likely to convince people that it's going to get worse if they're left in power. That this isn't some turnaround strategy to keep Democrats running anything in this state. You know what? I'm just going to mess with our little agenda here. Let's skip number 3 for now and come back to it. Let's go to number 4 and number 5, which fit with what you were just talking about here, and keep it local. So on this November's ballot, you need to be aware of something. There are going to be, count them, 50 local taxes that could raise taxes in the state by $1.6 billion. That is a lot of money. Um, fully um, uh, fully $450,000 of it is a bond to construct job training space and improve classrooms and safety and technology. So this is the government that's going to do this in the Portland metro area. The same government that's actually ramping up inflation and causing the labor shortage and applying more regulations to make it harder for employers to function and hire people. These brilliant people are going to raise your taxes $450 million to do all this stuff.
yeah.
What a scam.
You got to get your arms around this for a minute. At a time when inflation is higher than it's been in like 30 or 40 years, right? At a time when the employment market's tight, and when all of these other things are going on, you're going to make it harder for businesses to hire, make it harder for people to get jobs. It's incredible. It's almost like the personal equivalent would be you just lost your job and you decide to go on a shopping spree and take a vacation overseas. That's what they're doing.
And they figured that everybody just a bunch of suckers out here because at a time when it's hard for people to get by on a paycheck and they got inflation, particularly gas and energy prices gobbling up their paycheck, and food prices, they think the Democrats think it's a great time to raise taxes. That's there's more Democrat economics for you.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it.
So,
Everything they touch turns to, well, a word I can't say on this family-oriented show.
yes, exactly. But it begins with an S and ends with a T, and
That's
it's
it.
kind of what they do. If you want them to Portland the rest of the state, then do nothing and stay home. But if you'd like to change that, make sure you vote for Republicans, vote for conservatives. Make sure you figure out who to vote for amongst the the nonpartisan races. And now we've just supplied it to you, a list of measures to vote against, because we just can't afford the kind of out of control government that was already making our lives too expensive. And by the way, here's how expensive they're making it. In Oregon, the gas prices have surged, tying a previous record that was set on June 15th. They've surged by 85 cents in the last month to a average price in the state of $5.54 a gallon. So it's tied the record, and that is just hammering people. It really is hammering people, and of course, this is a combination of the type of restrictions, environmental restrictions they put on the fuel mixes that they allow. They basically model themselves after California in doing this, which is the most expensive way to produce gasoline. They don't have refineries here in Oregon, so they have to get it from somewhere else, where some of those have shut down recently. And then, of course, we've got at the national level President Brandon and his brilliant energy strategists who won't let us produce our own energy, even though we have plenty of it,
Yeah.
and are out begging Saudi Arabia and Venezuela. And of course, at one time, they're even begging the Russians to produce more oil. And they want to make sure that Iran can produce more oil so they can fund their nuclear bomb programs. So these brilliant people at the national level have created this perfect storm, and this is the effect it's having here in Oregon. That's expensive.
Well, I tell you, I think that's part of the green nut job strategy that they have. It's less about, it really has nothing to do with with the weather patterns and that sort of thing. It has everything to do with restricting your freedom and your ability to move around. That's what they're about. You look at Portland and the freeway systems, for example. There's not been a single lane of traffic added there since the Banfield was expanded back in like '85, right? What other major city in the country goes 40 years without a single lane of traffic? That's on purpose. I mean, you can hardly, so you can add to the misery if you have to drive around Portland. Now your gas prices are outrageous, on top of the fact that you're going about 5 miles an hour to get across town. And it's all strategic and on purpose, to force you onto their rail system, which is basically the criminal transportation system. And if you're brave enough to ride that thing, my hat's off to you. And then they won't let you have a gun so you can protect yourself while you're on it.
Right. So you have to go on it defenseless. Where it's the criminal distribution network, as you said,
Yes.
throughout the Portland metro area, for instance.
Exactly.
Also that you can take forever to get from one place to another, or nowhere at night, since it's too unsafe to ride. And they do. And how do they get you to do this? By punishing you for driving a car, which they hate. Don't vote for this stuff. If you don't want it, don't vote for it. Very simple. That's what Democrats have promised to do. That is what they will do more of. Now, Democrats have also been telling us that all people care about are pronouns and woke theory and abortion and getting free stuff from the government. That's all they care about. They don't care about anything else. But it turns out that all the polls say they're wrong, and it's having an effect on the election. So inflation apparently remains a top issue for midterm voters and for small business owners who can't just take giant piles of money they got, like if you're a larger company, and just or re-outsource from somewhere else or switch your operations to where it's cheaper. Consumers can't run away from this stuff. And small businesses can't. They function a little bit more like consumers. But it turns out that in a recent CBS News poll, likely voters surveyed said the economy and inflation, 82% and 76%, were very important issues to them. Mm-hmm. Both issues the Democrats don't want you to talk about, on which they are performing horrifically. And it's fueling what could be this massive red wave here for us across the state.
They're actually pretending like it's not an issue. Now that's new. If for those of us who are old enough, I believe it was when the first George Bush or the second George Bush was running, when it was, remember the whole mantra was, it's the economy, stupid, right? And now we should be saying the same thing, by the way. It's the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
But they're running around trying to run on anything but the economy. In fact, I picked up a New York Times article, which, I read on an empty stomach so I don't get sick. Because it's basically it's their mouthpiece, right? And they're trying to make the abortion issue the thing that they're going to run on. This is just a way of avoiding, all these other issues, which is a non-winner for them also. But that's what they think they're going to run on.
Yeah, it's like they're screaming in a person's issue about abortion while the person is at a at the checkout line at the supermarket trying to figure out how to pay for all this stuff, or at the pump trying to fill it. And it's like, abortion, screaming. I just paid $120 to fill my truck here. So, buzz off. I don't think that screaming in people's ear with an issue that's not their top issue is going to make any difference. And that's, of course, the dumbest issue in Oregon for them to be talking about, because there are already laws in Oregon that made it so that when Roe versus Wade is overturned, Oregon's unaffected.
Yeah,
so
it's laws here anyway.
It's just a way to fool people.
It's a non-issue.
So now there's a really important thing I want to make sure everybody knows about. This is the stuff that gets overlooked. It's that part of the ballot where it has those names of people you don't know, that you never heard of, but actually they're running for a judge position. And when they do run for these judge positions, they actually dramatically impact your public safety, and whether or not our system of justice is equal justice under the law, or if it's this new woke justice, which isn't that at all. It's not justice; it's injustice. There's a sitting judge. He was appointed, the same old scam. The governor appoints somebody to a seat that another judge vacates so that the governor can appoint everybody and then fool all the voters into thinking, well, this is an incumbent who's been there for a long time. He must be trusted. Well, there's a judge position down in Marion County, one that coincidentally happens to be one that used to be occupied prior to 2018 by Judge Vance Day. The person that was appointed to fill this vacancy is a guy named Arias Johnson Jr., which this is media speak for he's a lawless woke idiot. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna come out and say it. They say that he is they like to describe him as a pro-reform candidate. He wants criminal justice reform, which all sounds happy and good until you realize that they just reformed public safety out of existence in Portland using the same ideas. And this Kate Brown appointee, by the way, least popular governor in the United States and well-deserved, is the guy that expects to be reelected. However, he's facing a very tough challenger, who is a seasoned veteran prosecutor. Amy Queen is her name, Amy Queen. And I'm going to post this article in the feed. I want everyone to read this and realize that you're reading the usual liberal media propaganda, but it does give you some factoids about the race and who the different people are. And it lays out some background. It also compares the race with the recent Marion County District Attorney's race, which was very close. The attorney, district attorney that ran for re-election did win. Her name's Paige Clarkson, and she fought off a, again, reform-minded guy named Spencer Todd, which was funded by the Soros folks, because which the media describes as a defense attorney who promised change. Yeah, to get rid of your public safety, abolish it, and enshrine criminals as the real victims who don't need to pay any bail. They just need to get back out there and rehabilitate in your neighborhood as they steal more catalytic converters from your vehicles. And she fought him off. Well, they're saying that this is sort of a rematch in Marion County. And Amy Queen, if you haven't heard of her, she's great. You really got to take a look at her and her campaign. I am going to donate to her campaign right after we get off the show. I am putting a link in here for everyone who wants to do that, and send her something. Why? Because in these closing weeks, you can still get the word out and let folks know, because these local races, people often ignore them, which means that your vote can be even more powerful and your donation can be even more powerful in helping make sure that people know who to vote for, who are going to preserve their public safety. I like her name too, Amy Queen. It's just awesome.
That is a great name.
Yeah. You know, get a real queen to replace the person that Queen Kate appointed to destroy your public safety. And this guy, he's the judge that currently occupies this position. There's a whole story about how he was the child of the civil rights movement, and he's a lifelong quest to seek justice. I've always wanted to be a judge, he said. When you read through this, you'll start connecting the dots. This guy doesn't want to have the justice system that actually prosecutes and sentences criminals.
I read that. It's the biography of a leftist. I mean, you read enough of these things, you get 3 or 4 sentences deep, and you know you're dealing with the leftists, right? Pure and simple. You know, we really don't need any additional laws, generally speaking. You just need to enforce the laws that are in the books. And these guys just refuse to enforce the law. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just enforce the law. That's your job, by the way. Yeah. It's just enforce the law. If you want to change the law, there's a process for that. But
by the way,
don't do it.
Top donor to his campaign committee, Kate Brown. $5,000. And then a law firm in Portland that likes to specialize in um, ending incarceration as we know it, which means letting hardened criminals out of jail so they can run around in the streets and commit more crime, Portland style.
They've already done that.
Yeah. So how about if the folks do their part and get behind Amy Queen, who is a very attractive candidate for this position and somebody who has prosecuted every type of crime, including aggravated murder. She was promoted to the trial to be a trial team leader for the domestic violence team. She actually became the office's public information officer. So she's somebody who can actually address issues with the media. We just got to give her that extra boost so that she can do this job and begin to restore the justice system that we thought we had, and also restore public safety. By the way, her top contributor, she has about half the money of her opponent. Our top contributors, Salem Police Employees Union, hint. And then, of course, a good friend of ours, Colm Willis of Oregon, who's a conservative on the Salem City Council. I think that there are a lot of other folks within the law enforcement community, district attorneys, county commissioners, who I all recognize, like Kevin Cameron, Danielle Bethel, Senators Kim Thatcher, Representative Raquel Moore Green, some former Marion County judges have endorsed her. She's built some relationships. She's got support. We just have to make sure that people understand and can see this information. And they got to see it now because ballots are out in a week. So please support her. I'm going to.
You brought up a great point earlier about paying attention to local issues. I think it's very easy to focus on the national stuff. Everybody can tell you who the candidates are for president or whatever, but they can't tell you about the school board, the city council, the mayor's race, all those things local. Those are the things where you can have a dramatic impact, where you can actually show up in person, and go meet these people and hear what they're saying and really make a difference. Because it's the grassroots thing locally that really matters most.
Yeah, you got to participate in local government if you want where you live to actually uphold the law, for public safety to exist, for responsible government to exist, for taxes not to be outrageous, for regulations to be limited only to the absolute necessary stuff. If you want what happens in your everyday life to because that's how our governance is supposed to be set up. We're not supposed to be run every day out of Washington, D.C. or even Salem. We're supposed to be able to have a say in who peoples our institutions and runs them here locally. And this is an opportunity to do this when it comes to judges. We talked many months about the importance of judges when Vance Day was running for the statewide position of the appeals court. An appeals court, which, by the way, rubber stamped Kate Brown's, I still believe, unconstitutional clemencies meant to stick it to victims and ignore their concerns, as are required by law to receive input. But an appellate court just rubber stamped that. We have to change who's in these positions, and we can start best at the local level. Wouldn't it be great if we got a judge in there in Marion County, and then we get a Republican governor, and then when there is a vacancy, we can actually replace that person with someone like Amy Queen, who's got their act together. So let's do everything we can to support her and get the word out and send this information to everyone you know. Just a quick synopsis: stop the lawless, woke Kate Brown appointees from destroying our justice system. Support Amy Queen, and let's get her elected.
Yeah, and that's part of the strategic thing they've done, by the way. You notice these candidates, they never resign in the time when there be an election. They always resign midterms so they can get appointed by the Democrat governor. It's like appalling, but that's how they usurp the democratic process.
That's how they do it. They do it late enough usually to make sure that they also don't have to face re-election, but it doesn't always work out that way. And I know that if there's a Republican governor, a whole bunch of these people are going to stay. The Kate Brown appointees are going to try to stay in office as long as they can. But we have to challenge them at every opportunity. We have to lock arms and save our communities from these people that are destroying it with the lawlessness, and destroying public safety, and making it so that our law enforcement can't function anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Our backs are literally to the wall. I mean,
Yeah,
for years, let's face it, people who live are conservative generally want to run their life, work hard, stay out of trouble, do what they're supposed to do. You don't have time to participate in this, or you haven't taken the time to participate in this stuff. But
yeah.
now they've gotten to the point now where you cannot ignore them and continue to run your life.
Yeah, you
Or
can't
you're gonna
ignore it
have
anymore. If
yeah,
you
you're
if
gonna have
you
a tent in your front yard with somebody urinating in the bushes, and that's not an exaggeration because that's happening in Portland all the time.
Yeah.
Um,
If you're missing a catalytic converter, change how you vote.
yeah,
Okay, please.
yeah.
Now, for our last story here, kind of I'm going to call it the closing laugh because we already had the positive news story for the 6th congressional district. The closing laugh is this. The headline reads: Biden releases long overdue national security strategy to combat China and Russia.
You got to be kidding
And I
me.
mean, do you see the immediate humor in this? And that's being kind to call it long overdue. So let's see. China's threatening to invade Taiwan. China was the origin and refuses to cooperate on all the stuff that happened with COVID. They've threatened Australia about that. They've been threatening other countries, and Russia has invaded another country and has launched a massive war. And Joe Biden, here just weeks shy of the middle of his term, has finally released a national security strategy to address these two things.
Yeah, and given his success with Afghanistan, I'm
Oh,
really confident this is gonna work. And he's done all this in less than 2 years. You realize it's been less than 2 years?
well, I think we know what his national security strategy is. We've
Well,
been seeing it. It's a disaster. We've got wars. We've got
mhm,
terrorists rebuilding their safe havens. We've got Iran doing whatever the heck they want, moving towards a bomb. We've
mhm.
got China that kind of feels like we got a weak sister in the White House. Let's do something here. Let's
Oh,
threaten these guys. And then of course,
mhm,
Russia kind of thought, well, we've got somebody who's really not going to step up and do anything,
mhm.
um, and deter a war, which Biden didn't do. So now here we are. But now the guys. So what this is this is a 48-page report, um, meant to confuse us all and make us all think that all this crap that's been going on for the past 2 years isn't really his strategy, when in fact I think it is. And it points out one other thing. Well, it points out a couple of other things, but one of them is, we never had a foreign policy national security debate for president. It never happened.
True.
It was the third debate. It was canceled. And so we never got to hear in a presidential debate what Joe Biden was going to do. Wow, that didn't work out.
Yeah.
He should have been asked some questions and held accountable for his answers, but we never even got to ask those questions because the media didn't want you to hear what he was going to do. And he's doing what he really believes was the right thing to do. And it turns out it's been disastrous. The other thing is, listen to what they say. This 48-page report covers topics such as creating, quote, an inclusive world, unquote, battling climate change, and how the Biden administration is combating its top security concern, which is, quote, domestic violent extremists, unquote.
Yeah, we're being run by children, basically.
Or
Uh,
diabolical evil,
most
because those three things don't even come close to being the most important things we should be concerned about right now in a world where our energy supplies are truly threatened. The economic well-being of the West is at stake, and frankly, our enemies, and they are enemies, are pretty much running wild and doing what they want. And
yeah,
while Joe Biden depletes the military stockpiles of the United States with no plans to replace them in the immediate future,
mhm.
he said he's helping Ukraine, but help the United States when we don't have artillery shells anymore? Who's going to do that?
Think about this: the war on basic morality that's gone on. I mean, basic common sense that's gone on. I mean, if you can't think and you have no family, what else really matters? And these policies that they are constantly pimping on the media are going to lead exactly to that: the destruction of Western civilization and then the end of family. Well, there's nothing to fight for in the first place if we lose that, and that's what they're about, you know.
And when you send a message of weakness, you train the rest of the world to start behaving differently, which in turn means that you end up finding yourself in more armed conflicts, more wars, more things that take you away from prosperity and security here at home, because we have somebody who's an incompetent in the White House. And by the way, it's no one else's job in the federal government to run national security and foreign policy apparatus on a day-to-day basis. That's the president's job. And this guy's terrible at it. And he puts out garbage reports like this that focus on all these things that are either non-issues, or in this case, I think he's decided that his political opposition is the biggest target of his national security strategy and climate change.
Well, it's clear the real enemy is us. It's we the people. Yeah. I mean, he's actually said things that you would think no sitting president, no person in any position would say. I think part of this is because he's got a senility issue and he let it slip out what he really thinks. But he's made comments around, for example, attacking people who bear arms. It's unbelievable. We got bigger guns, meaning the Department of Defense.
F-15s, yeah. He said that. Yeah.
I mean, it's just breathtaking.
And by the way, how does he create a more inclusive world by excluding everybody who might disagree with him and calling them terrorists and extremists? That's an inclusive world. It's a world that it would be better off if it didn't include him, to be honest. But I think I want to laugh at this. I also want to cry. But I also know that this election is the beginning of changing this. We've got to have a Congress that starts yanking the chains on this guy and holding him accountable and changing the direction that things are heading. Because 2 more years of him driving this country into the ground and destroying its national security and its image abroad. I mean, people in other countries, leaders from other countries, must just be laughing at this guy when he comes and he shakes the hand of nobody and he tries to ask for Congress people who have recently deceased, and he's gonna. All these countries around the world at one time probably thought that the United States was going to be a reliable ally and a source of their security. I'm pretty sure that they're aiming more towards self-sufficiency at this point, if they can.
Oh, they better be. And the reality is, I hate to say it, they should be. Because we're a democratic republic, which means every 4 years you're subject to something like this happening. Now, this is worse than it's ever been. But if I'm Japan and I've got this treaty that says that I'm not going to defend myself, and then I look and see what we got in office right now, I got to be thinking to myself, I don't care what that treaty says.
Yeah, I think it's time for Japan to start manufacturing some really high-end nuclear missiles. I think that's where they're headed.
They better get on the horn with Tel Aviv and get it figured out.
Because the Biden plan ain't gonna cut it.
It ain't gonna cut it. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. You think about countries like Indonesia, Taiwan, Japan, Vietnam, South Korea. Hey, you can't count on these guys. I hate to say it, these guys being us, but when we're capable of having people like this, and let's face it, it wasn't an election. We know it was stolen, but I can't look at this like that if I'm in their shoes, because these clowns are at their back door. At least in our case, they got to lob something across the ocean to get here. They're in the case of what is not Saigon, South Korea, Seoul. It's like 90 minutes. Yeah. You can almost walk, and there's a 2 million man army just waiting for the opportunity. And we have been so fortunate to live in a country where we got 2 oceans, on the east and west, and 2 friendly countries, north and south. We don't have to worry about this. Our biggest problem is illegal immigration is trying to get here and have a better life. In the grand scheme of world republics, that's a great problem to have. We're not bordered by mortal enemies out to murder us. And obviously, we'd like to fix that.
Yeah, Joe Biden's not done.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the things that we have to remember is that consistent trait of Republican foreign policy, peace through strength. It was
Yeah.
not only Ronald Reagan's program, which actually ended the Cold War, but it was what Donald Trump did too. It was a
Mhm.
muscular foreign policy that produced peace. We had peace everywhere and prosperity.
Yeah.
Obviously, COVID messed up with some of this, but that's what we had. And what do we have with Joe Biden? We have the opposite. We have wars sprouting up everywhere because of weakness.
Mhm.
And pretty soon, we're going to find ourselves in a place that we never expected.
Well,
I hope we can act quickly enough through our election system to change the course of events.
you think about the insanity of the NATO. I know we're getting close to the NATO, but you think about the insanity of what they're doing with NATO, for example. Here's a structure that was put in place by the brilliance of the leadership at the end of World War II that has kept Europe from its own throats for what, 70 years? And now we got an administration that's doing things to upset that program, right? You start inviting countries in the NATO that are at Russia's back door. They're not going to stand for it. I don't care what the media says, right? Ukraine is never going to be in NATO. And that's a nuclear power we're talking about. Now, whether you agree with Putin or not is irrelevant. They're not going to let it happen. They said they weren't going to let it happen. And we tried to do it anyway, and they responded to that. That's not a question of how we feel and what we like. That's in the words of Henry Kissinger, that's real politics. That's
Yeah.
how it rolls.
And I don't even know who's really making these decisions because nobody believes Joe Biden is cognitively capable of holding these thoughts in his head long enough to make a decision. We know it's not Vice President Giggles issuing word salad. He has no idea which. I can't decide who knows less about what's coming out of their mouth.
Mhm.
Joe Biden, who doesn't actually know unless it's handed to him and he still can't read it, or Vice President Giggles, who issues what she considers to be serious statements, and no one can figure out what she's actually said. It's just like circular statements that
those people are they're being public.
somebody in there actually is doing something and making these decisions, and I'd be great to know who they are, who's running our country.
We'd be
and let's get 'em
speculating.
out of there.
It's not these two. We're just speculating, but it ain't those
Yeah.
two. I'm with you.
Well, that wraps up our evening of captive audience here. Thanks everyone for joining us. Don, thank you for joining me here tonight. It was fun.
Thank you. It was a blast. I'm glad to be back.
And everybody, please share the show with everyone you can. And I agree, Marjorie. Let's pray for our country. We need those prayers no matter what. And pray for your fellow voters that they step up. This is the time. And step up and help people like Amy Queen so that we can have a justice system. It'd be great. We can still do this. Let's do this and share this show with everyone you can. We will be back on Friday with another episode of The Captive Audience. I think it should be Sunny and David. We might get back on a regular schedule here, but we'll see. But again, we really appreciate your viewership and wish you guys a great evening. Don, great evening to you too. And thank you, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Always
Good
a
night.
pleasure.